Hi everyone, this is day 4 of 4 power plants you may have taken for granted, and today we're doing cacao. So I'm going to give people a few minutes to get settled in case anyone's going to be watching this live. And I just want to, oh hi Kirsten, I just want to let people know that there may be some background noise. There's some remodeling going on in the building. And if it's too problematic, I'll post another copy of this that I made beforehand. But the other thing I just want to make sure is that everybody has a chance to look at Kirsten's live stream from yesterday about tobacco, because there's a lot of wonderful information about working with tobacco to purify and to do some of the shamanic healing work in a safe way, especially with plant spirits that many of us are wanting to do more of, or called to do more of. Hi. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today is the last day of this series, and I just want to thank everybody who's watched and everyone who has signed up. And hi, Vikavas, how are you? And I just want to thank everyone who's watched and who's signed up to receive the free gifts. I will be adding a link in the comments section of this post so that you can still sign up if you want to get all 4 of the spiritual practices. So, I'm going to go ahead now with cacao. So just take a deep breath. And for a moment, just become aware of your feet, how they touch the ground or the floor. Sense your feet, their connection to a point about a foot below the ground, where you connect with nature and with all the energies of nature that feed you. Just take a moment to breathe that in. And then shoot that energy down, down, down to the core, the heart of the earth, the heart of earth, to her dreaming for you. And feel that for a moment. And then feel the energy come up through your root chakra, through your heart, through your third eye, out your crown, and out all the way up to Father Sun, and up further to the heart of heaven. And then come down from the heart of heaven, down, 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 through your crown chakra, down through your heart, down to the earth, and back up again to mix in your heart. And so I just want to real quick say hi. Hi, Jessica. Good morning. And I just want to, before I talk about the healthy use of cacao, I want to talk about a little bit about some of the problems with cacao and chocolate before we get to the good stuff. Cacao is a somewhat misunderstood plant in the sense that it was a much more ceremonial and ritual plant than many of us are taught to believe. And even the chocolate industry has been a place that has created suffering for people who are involved in growing or producing the cacao that we all love as chocolate. And hi Christina, how are you? And some of this is related to just a basic misunderstanding of the plant itself. Chocolate is not as misused in terms of, there aren't as many people who are dependent on chocolate as dependent on coffee or tobacco. But if people are going to have a problem with cacao or chocolate, they tend to binge, and a lot of it's women. Sometimes it's related to their menstrual cycles. And it's also a situation where, like in my own case, I used to eat chocolate. I was sort of a binge chocolate eater. I would like be completely disinterested in it, and then all of a sudden I'd start eating it for like a couple of days. And I really thought it was the sugar. I didn't realize that there were alkaloids in the chocolate that I was needing that were actually helpful to my body. But it's the way chocolate is prepared in our culture, mixed with sugar and dairy and other things, that made it so unhealthy and addictive. Whereas chocolate, when it's prepared in a more traditional way, is actually a supplement. It's actually very healthy. So now I'm going to take a little time to talk about a little bit about how chocolate was used a long time ago. And then closer to the end, I'll talk about how we can use chocolate now. I became interested in chocolate around the time that I got interested in the other superfoods that I talked about in the coffee section. And I started eating cacao nibs and having cacao powder as part of like either making a weak cocoa or adding it to smoothies. And I noticed that I felt fantastic afterwards, much better than I did from ever eating chocolate. And I couldn't figure out why this was. And I began to find out that cacao has a lot of heart-healthy antioxidants. That's one of its many nutrients. It also has a lot of vitamin C. And as I'm going to go into later, it has some very special compounds that are connected to the heart and to a feeling of well-being. So I'm just going to take a moment and see if there's a question. When Halloween comes around, I have no self-control through Christmas. Yes, absolutely. The nibs are so bitter, it's hard to switch. Yeah, I mean, you really have to... the nibs I found was the least easy to work with chocolate. I actually found the powder, the cacao powder, to be a lot easier to work with for my own self. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So cacao is a wild plant that started out in Central America and very quickly became domesticated by the ancestors of the Maya, known as the Olmecs. And they're the people who built Teotihuacan. If you've ever seen photographs of the Pyramid of the Sun, it's this gigantic pyramid. They're that culture. And cacao even comes from their language, or it's thought to come from their language as a word. And basically, cacao was pretty quickly domesticated. It spread to other parts of Latin America. It was definitely used in ancient Peru and continues to be used in Peru. And it even has a connection to the Amazon. So, but where people really think of traditional cacao use is in the heartland of the Maya, the Aztecs, and the Olmecs. And let me see if there's a question. I will get some powder and try that. Yeah, do, because I'll talk about that a little later, where you can find that. Usually it's in the supplement section of a health food store. Like you can't find it in the chocolate or sugar or baking section where you think you'll find it. It's actually near the trail mix or the supplements, which is kind of funny, but that's, at least in Whole Foods and some other health food stores that I've been to, that's what I've seen. So basically, cacao starts out as a plant. The fruit, the seeds of it, are fermented, and then they're roasted, ground, and then they're prepared into however they're going to be, whatever process you're going to make, a drink, candy, however you're going to do it. And for the Maya, who we associate with chocolate today, and the Aztecs, cacao was a drink. They had many different types of cacao drinks, but it was primarily a drink. And it was used, they very quickly figured out that cacao had, because of the caffeine, and something called theobromine, which is an alkaloid in the cacao, that this produced a state of euphoria. And not only euphoria, but a sense of like actual, it increases circulation. So you're actually getting more blood to the rest of your body. So there was a sense of well-being, of connection to the heart, of like a even greater love. And so right off the bat, the Maya must have sensed this because they were very good doctors and they had a wonderful connection to the plant kingdom. And very quickly, chocolate became associated with the gods. It became associated with actual sacrificial victims, the hearts of sacrificial victims, and it became associated with blood. And blood is very holy in the Central American native universe. It carries the life force, and it's a gateway between this world and the other world. And people who were sacrificed were going there to become gods so that they could turn around and benefit the people in this world. And so they were honored in that way. So basically, the Dominicans are the ones who brought cacao to the West, to the Catholic Church, because the Dominicans got interested in cacao and the church became like chocolate, like chocoholics kind of, like really quickly. And they took a delegation of Kekchi Maya, who we'll hear from again, and they brought them to the Pope, and this is how chocolate was introduced to the West. And another big player in chocolate coming to the West were Spanish Jews, who were forced to leave Spain because of their religion. They wound up going to Central America. They became involved in chocolate production, and they also spread cacao to Europe. Susan Moore, good morning. Hey, good morning to you too. So, basically, just to show you how holy cacao was, here's some of the ways that the ancient Maya used it. And you can actually see murals that have been excavated by archaeologists that will show like an important Maya king surrounded by his attendants, and he's got like a giant pot of cacao drink in front of him, or a female attendant is pouring cacao from one container to another, because this was a technique that Mayan people used to whip the cacao into a frothy hot chocolate. So basically, in the sacred book of the Quiche Maya, which is called the Popol Vuh, there's one version of the story where the father of the protagonists, the people who are going to save the Mayan people, the Holy Twins, their father has his head chopped off by the evil lords of Xibalba, who are the lords of the underworld. And they hang this unfortunate being's head on a cacao tree. But because he's a magical being, he can still talk, and he still has power. And so he meets the daughter of one of the evil lords, and she talks to him, and he magically impregnates her. And she gives birth to the hero twins who will eventually defeat the evil lords and triumph. And this is like a core myth in the Quiche society. So that kind of shows you how important cacao was to the Mayan people and why you see so much of it in their beautiful paintings, their murals. Hi, Catherine. And basically what you see is there are a lot of it is related to relationships. It's either an offering for the gods, or it has to do with, for example, the birth of a royal baby. A royal baby is born, they plant a cacao orchard. Or in a marriage contract, cacao was given, you might see the bride in a mural giving cacao to the king in a royal wedding. So you can see right away that it has to do with, family matters, and obviously it was drunk by the elite frequently. So I'm just going to take a moment and see if there are any questions so far. You can't get better proof than those murals of how sacred cacao is. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the fact that anything that shows up on those ancient murals is very, very important and is both a status symbol, and because the kings were kind of like priest kings, it has a religious overtone as well. Yeah, and very much connected to the heart. Now, another thing about cacao is that it's as an ingredient, it mixes well with other substances. And I'll give you two examples. Both ancient and modern Mayan people mix things like chili and other ingredients with the cacao to increase its like energetic qualities, because you know how cayenne is like an energizing herb that helps with immune system and kind of it sort of jumpstarts your entire system. So you can see the health benefit of mixing that with the cacao. The Aztecs had an even more extreme relationship with cacao, which I'll go into in a minute. But with them, they were actually mixing the plant, and this is the first really ritual use of it. They're mixing it with actual hallucinogens, like magic mushrooms, what we've called psilocybin mushrooms, and also with morning glory seeds. And morning glory seeds for the Aztecs were like a natural form of LSD, basically. It did the same thing. And so chocolate is like a very mild MAO inhibitor. So the cacao was basically strengthening the effect of these other substances. And so they've actually found cacao containers. The Spanish monks wrote about the Aztecs drinking these hallucinogenic drinks, and they found pots filled with cacao drinks in Mayan tombs of elite, like kings and queens and stuff like that. So I'll just take a moment to see. When I lived in the Southwest, I had access to Mexican candy, and that seems to be a popular combination. Yes, it is. It's still, in fact, even in the Mexican version of hot chocolate, which is a little bit more European because they add milk to it, and they really sweeten it up and add some other things like cinnamon. Those chilies seem to find their way in there, you know. And I think there's even some candy companies that make a chocolate bar with peppers in it that I've had. It's pretty good. So now I'm going to talk about the connection between cacao and the heart, because that's really where we're going with this whole thing. The Mayas and Aztecs did have some traditions of basically using, which are continued to this day. So, for example, I think this is the Kekchi people. When a matchmaker is going to arrange a bridal match, she is paid in cacao because that's a prestige offering. And then the groom will give the bride 13 cacao seeds at the wedding, because 13 is like a holy number. It has to do with the Mayan sacred calendar, and it's very sacred. Basically, at the Yucatan Peninsula, the Mayas who live there, you can still see them drinking cacao at weddings and funerals. There's a special porridge that's made with masa harina. You may have heard of masa. It's that special cornmeal that's ground with limestone so that it has a higher protein. And it's mixed with cacao to make a delicious, like, sort of dessert porridge. And this is an offering that's done at Yucatan family altars. The Maya will offer this to the beloved dead as a way of communicating with them. And then the family drinks cacao, and the ancestors are offered cacao, the way we might offer wine or favorite foods to our ancestors at a Halloween ritual or a Dia de los Muertos ritual, depending on your tradition. So, hi, Catherine. How are you? It's good to see you. So, also the Lacandon the Lacandon are a Mayan people who live a little bit more closer to the Yucatan, and they have a tradition that you see the Mayan ancient people doing, which is they're offering it in bowls, cacao, it's a special cacao recipe that's only done for rituals, and it's offered as an offering to the gods. So what's interesting about tobacco and cacao is both of them have a very rich tradition in the Americas as a way to ask for, to get the attention of the divine, to get them to be on their side. And I'll go into that a little bit more when I go into how we can use with cacao. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about how we as modern people who don't live in a traditional, we're not Maya, we don't live in a traditional culture like that, how we can work with cacao in a good way. And the first is to leave a small piece of it as an offering. And you can do this with a chocolate bar. Like, it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's great if it's organic, and in a few minutes I'll go into that, but just a way to start to make a better relationship with chocolate and cacao is to just break off a little tiny piece of it and leave it as an offering on the ground if you have a chance. The reason why this is so beneficial is because in the Andes, where they actually have chocolate candy, the Andean people have adopted chocolate candy as an ingredient in their sacred offerings called despachos. And the chocolate offering, or chocolate candy, is an offering to Pachamama because she loves sweets. And it's thought that cacao was probably always associated with Mother Earth. And since Pachamama is sort of like the senior deity in Andean traditions, offering a little piece of chocolate in a ritual way before you eat your chocolate bar is just a way of saying to Mother Space-Time that you're thankful for her gifts and you want to have the best possible interaction that you can. Let me see if there's a question here. Hi, Marissa. So glad I'm here. Just woke up. I love Mexican hot chocolate. Oh, fantastic. So you've had it. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, those of you who've had experiences with hot chocolate, feel free to share them on the post if you feel comfortable doing so, because, you know, it's really fun when you've actually had a chance to be in these cultures and experience it. And, you know, mole sauce is another, you know, way of, you know, so basically, oh, hold on for a minute. Jessica Larkin, I was moved to leave pieces of pure chocolate in the woods last year, but was concerned I might injure animals. Well, okay, I'll tell you what I do. I'll get into how I do offerings. I've been leaving chocolate offerings for a long time, but I decided pretty early on that unless I was doing a despacho, that I was going to work with pure cacao powder. And the cacao powder I work with is, like I said earlier, one that I get from Whole Foods. It's in the supplement section. I think it comes from the Amazon in Peru, but you can get Mayan ones that are that have a connection to indigenous communities that are fair trade, and it's just 100% cacao. It's just ground up cacao nibs, so there isn't any sugar or anything like that. And at that point, because, you know, I think at that point you're offering something that's pretty close to nature. It's just basically a fermented version of what would lie on the ground anyway. So I feel pretty good about it. I've even put it in the water. So, I mean, obviously you have to check in with your own spirits, but that I've felt the best about doing. And I do leave offerings quite a bit. It's just a good way. One of my helping spirits likes chocolate. So I leave cacao as a way of bonding with her. So you may find out that one of your helping spirits likes cacao. So you can see, leaving it as an offering is one way. But there's also been a renaissance in understanding the cacao drink as a ritual in itself. And a lot of people have been interested in basically making a very powerful version of a cacao drink made with either the powdered cacao that I just described, or even sourcing from Central America indigenous produced cacao, which is made into these kind of little, like almost pellets that are soft, and basically you have to grind it yourself. If you sign up for the newsletter, when you get the replay today, I will have links to a man who calls himself a chocolate shaman, and he gives dosages and ways to get this indigenous cacao from him, and also preparation instructions. I will also be including a link to a woman who does a solo cacao ceremony, which is much more modified and much easier to do with cocoa. But what I do, and you can do this with any chocolate, because cacao being an MAO inhibitor, there's a little bit of a problem that for people who take certain kinds of medication, they might have a problem with an intense, very concentrated cacao drink. And it might be more helpful for them to stick with what they already have, what they're already doing. So for that person, for any person who's using cacao, any form of chocolate, what I do is, depending on where I am, let's say I'm at home, I have a very quick way of preparing myself, which I show you in the video, and then I eat some of the cacao, or drink the cocoa, or eat some of the chocolate, and then I pray in some hand position that opens the heart. So you can either do like the Reiki one, you can do Namaste, or I use the Mayan crossed arms position, which is how some of the Yucatec native elders taught people to pray to the Mayan calendar. And what's interesting about this ceremony, no matter what form you do it in, if you spend a few minutes tuning into this, you will notice the heart-opening energy of chocolate or cacao. You'll feel the sensations in your heart. You may even pick up which side of your heart chakra is more blocked than the other, or if there are any blocks. You may feel it going into your emotional body and kind of bringing up things to be released and processed. Depending on how strong your cacao preparation is and how deep you want to go with this, it can either be just a quick check-in, or it can be something that you do as a real meditation. But the thing about the cacao ceremony, no matter what form you do it in, is that it fosters like a little mini healing ritual, which for me, I feel is badly needed right now. And it kind of affirms all those women who ate chocolate or binged on chocolate because they felt like it made them feel loved, or it helped them feel more romantic, or whatever your interest was in chocolate. That you were, if you've ever done that, you were on the right path. You just didn't have the right form of cacao because our culture didn't offer that option to us. But it's interesting, just to get back to the cacao ceremony, that it's become so popular that it's even happening in certain rave communities. It's caught on that intensely. So let me just see where I am in terms of questions or comments. I love mole too. I am from Southern California, where traditional Mexican families use masa and cacao as religious family rituals, as you described. Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. Oh, so maybe you've seen one of those altars. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. It's really beautiful when you see people using it in its traditional sense like that. You know, it's like tobacco or any other thing. But the good news is you don't have to be from that area or have a traditional background to connect with this plant in the way, in a good way, in the way it's meant to be connected with. So let me just see, Jessica. Oh, good. I always have some here. Oh, fantastic. Great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't drink cacao every day. I probably have it maybe 3 or 4 times a week, maybe more sometimes. But I try to remember to check in and do the crossed arms practice because it just turns it more into a self-healing ritual. And it gives a greater chance for that euphoric state that you're meant to have with the cacao to be a blessing instead of just a quick drink that you slam down or a candy bar that you slam down, you know, on your way to some other activity. So it's almost 12, and I just want to give, in fact it is 12, so I want to be mindful of people's time, and I want to thank you all for, you know, being at these live streams. It's been really wonderful sharing this with all of you. Thank you for signing up, and I will post the link for the practices at the bottom of the comments. And if anybody made a comment that I missed, I'll go through the comments and check in as people get a chance to watch this later on today. So blessings to all of you, and thank you so much.